is good to be with you again. I didn't say it's good to see you because I can't see you, but I can be with you, and you can be with me. Remember last week, I thought of a whole bunch of boys and girls whose name began with different letters at the beginning of the alphabet, and today I'm looking at the end of the alphabet and thinking of boys and girls that begin with the last letters of our alphabet. For instance, your name might begin with Z. Do you know anybody that's name begins with Z? There are some countries where there are a number of names that begin with Z. There's a Bible story about a Zeno, Z-E-N-O, and his name, of course, begins with Z. Not in the Bible, really, but it's a story that's about the Bible times, and his name began with Z. But we did have a president one time whose name was Zachary, and that begins with Z. And one of the kids in our youth group at one time had a friend whose name was Zachary. And he went on a bike trip with us, and we got to know him real good. Now he's older, and he's out of school, all that. But I don't know too many people whose name begins with Zachary or Z. Then we have Y. Again, I can't think of a lot of people. I do know, like, somebody named Yolanda. I don't know that person, but I've heard that name, Yolanda. And you might know somebody whose name begins with a Y. X is another kind of not a common name. In the Bible, there's a man named Ahasuerus, but in Greek history, his name was Xerxes, began with an X. And of course, we have copy papers that we Xerox. And that sounds like it ought to start with Z, but it doesn't. It starts with an X again. Well, then there's U. Well, nope, got to go to V first. V and W. So let's go back to W. W, you might know some people. We have some people in our church whose name begins with W. And I had a brother whose name began with W. His name was Wayne. And there are other people whose name begins with W, and so we're happy for those people. Then there was U. Oh, got to go back to V again, going backwards. V. Now there's Victor and Viola and Veronica and Virgil. I had a teacher in my school whose name was Virgil, and his wife's name was Marion. He was our school superintendent, and his wife taught Latin. I took Latin as she taught it. And her name, as I say, was Marion. His name was Virgil. But the strange thing was I had another teacher, and her name was Virgil, and her husband's name was Marion. He was just the reverse of that. That was kind of funny, I thought, back in those days. But many times we have names that are switched back and forth. So we have U, V, U. I can't think of anybody whose name begins with U. But I had a lot of family members whose name began Uncle. And I had an Uncle Howard, I had an Uncle Edward, I had an Uncle Milton, I had an Uncle Don. I had a lot of uncles. And you probably have some uncles too that you can think about. And some aunts that goes way back to the beginning of the alphabet. Well, we've got the U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Before that, T. T. Now, there are a lot of people. I know somebody whose name begins with T, and her name is Trinity. Now, she's the only person I have ever met whose name was Trinity. We talk about Trinity in church, but her name was Trinity. Well, there are a lot of other names, and we'll find more of them next week, but we do have some W's in our church, that I do know. And some of those are young, and some of them are older. But we have those. Well, we're picking up our story from last week. You remember that Peter and Janet and, what was her name? Story was about her. Was it Yvonne? No, that begins with I. Let's see. Elaine, that's what it was, Elaine. They were going to town to get some ice cream. Oh, they loved ice cream. I think one of their favorite flavors was dill pickle. Have you ever had dill pickle ice cream? Probably not. But it's almost as good as red pepper ice cream. And I don't care for that either. And I don't like anchovies ice cream, but I do like maple walnut, and I like butter pecan, and I just plain like vanilla or chocolate or peanut butter. Oh, those are all good ice cream. I don't know what flavors they got, but they got some ice cream. And they were standing there in town eating their ice cream because Mr. Owens had given them some money for cleaning up Philippa's garden and having it so nice. And so they went to town. Well, while they were there eating their ice cream, Elaine looked over and she said, there, look there. And she pointed over yonder, and Peter said, look at what? What? It's him. She said, it's him. It's the burglar. Well, just about that time, the burglar looked over her way and saw her. He was standing on the street corner. He took off and he ran across the street. Well, Peter started to run after him, and the man got across the street, but there was a policeman there at the time when that man started to cross the street, and Peter started to cross, and the policeman said, whoa, you can't run out into the traffic like that. And I get that page, and Peter said, but he's a burglar, he's a crook. And the policeman said, but I can't have you running across the street in front of the traffic. You'll have to go down to the police station and tell them and give them a description of the man. Well, Peter was pretty discouraged. He thought, they're not going to believe me anyway. But they decided, all three of them, to go tell Mr. Owens, and he would call the police, and that's just what they did. They went back and told him about that. Now, the fact that the criminal, the burglar, had seen Elaine, that was kind of scary again, because she didn't know whether she'd meet him in another place or what would happen. So it was a little scary. Well, the next day, school was over, and Mr. Owens and Mrs. Owens said, we're going to go camping. Now, I bet some of you have been camping too. They were going to go camping up in the mountains where there was a lake and beautiful grass and wild animals and trails and hiking places. And so they packed up the car and they got ready to go up to the mountain and set up their tents by the lake. And it was great. And that night, after they had all camp set up, that night they built a campfire. Oh, camping with a campfire is so much fun. And they cooked hot dogs on a stick. And they had, let's see, what else would you have while you're camping? Hot dog, baked potatoes. They wrapped them up in tin foil and put them in the coals, and they baked up nice. And for dessert, you can bake apples and put some cinnamon on them, and they are delicious. And then you can have s'mores, because after you eat a s'more, you want some more. And so they had a great time. And then around the campfire that night, they had a nice campfire. And Mr. Owens talked about in the Bible how shepherds were out in the fields, and they would gather around the campfire as they watched their sheep. And they would protect them from all the dangers that might be out there from the animals and from thieves and things like that, and how the shepherds cared for their sheep. And they talked about in the Bible, there's a story about the good shepherd and how he cares for his sheep and protects them. And we find that Jesus said he was the good shepherd. And also in the Old Testament, it tells about how the good shepherd takes care of the sheep, and he carries the baby lambs with him. Now, when we get back, or when you get back to the building here, you can look in one of the windows. I'm not going to tell you which one, but this picture is in one of the windows of the good shepherd caring for his sheep. Well, that was a nice story to go to bed by. And Elaine laid in her sleeping bag and thought how good and beautiful it was out there in the wild with Mr. and Mrs. Owens to take care of them and protect them. And they were safe, and they felt safe. The next morning, Peter and Elaine, because Janet was going to help Mom get breakfast, but Peter and Elaine said, let's go for a hike. It was early, it was cold and chilly, but they went for a hike. Well, they got into the woods a little bit, and the fog started to set in. The fog's all that kind of makes it hard to see, so it got pretty thick. And they were walking along, and they heard somebody coming. And they said, let's step aside so that we can see who it is. And so they kind of stepped behind a rock and some trees, and this person came by, and you know who it was? It was the burglar again. They had seen him again. He didn't see them. They were real quiet. And Peter said, we're going to follow him. Be very quiet. Don't say anything so that he won't know where we are. And so they began to follow him as fast as they could. But it was so foggy, it was hard to see. And as Peter was going faster than Elaine could go, she tripped and fell on a root and hurt her foot. But she didn't want to scream because she didn't want the burglar to know that they were back there. And so she just kind of held her breath and tried to get up, and she was hobbling along, and she fell again, and this time when she fell over a bank and down into a gully. And oh, she was hurting. It was painful, and she didn't know what to do, and she lay there for a few moments, and then she called out for help, and she said, "Help me, somebody help me." And then she heard footsteps coming. And "It's Peter. Peter's coming back to help me." And she said, "I'm over here. I'm over here." And then she looked up. And you know who she saw? The burglar. He had come back. Oh my goodness, she was scared. She screamed. And then you know what happened? We find out next week. Ah, that was scary. But there she was out there. And she was hurt. And nobody had come except the burglar. Well, I have a couple of songs I want to sing with you today. One of them talks about camping. I hope that many of you will be able to go camping. I hope the camps can open up this summer and we can go back to the church camps. Some of you were there last year with me, and some of you went to church camp in a different camp than I did. But you had a good time, and you probably sang around a campfire. And you might have sung this song. This song is sung as a round. Now that doesn't mean you have to sit around in a circle, but it's sung as a round because the first group starts to sing the song, and they get through a phrase, and then a second group can start in at the very beginning while the first group is going on to the next verse or the next phrase. And you can do it with as many as 4 groups in this particular song. So I'll sing it, and then you can sing it with me. And then if you're at home with some brothers or sisters or family, maybe you can do it as a round. Okay? And you can end up all together by singing that last phrase over and over again. It goes like this. I love the mountains, I love the rolling hills, I love the flowers, I love the daffodils, I love the campfire when all the lights are low. Boom-de-yada, 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 boom-de-yada. I love the mountains, I love the rolling hills, I love the flowers, I love the daffodils, I love the campfire when all the lights are low. Boom-de-yada, 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 boom, boom, boom. How about that? Wasn't that a good song? Now, our organist is sitting over here, and she doesn't know this, but she's going to come over and help me sing that song as a round. Okay, come on over, Mrs. Organist.
Oh, why?
And she may not even know the song, but she's going to learn it, okay? And this is how it goes. Can you see the organist here? Okay. Have you sung this song?
Yeah, but it's a long time.
It's been a long time. It's right there. Open that book up. And there it is. Okay. Now I'm going to sing through the first part.
Okay.
And then you start at the beginning when I go on to I love the flowers, I love the daffodils.
Okay.
You got it? Okay. And then I'm going to sing boom de twice. And she'll end up.
Okay.
We hope it'll work. If it doesn't, that's okay. It's fun. Okay? I love the mountains. I love the rolling hills. I love the flowers.
I thought you were going to sing the whole thing through one time.
No.
Okay, I did not understand that
See,
whatsoever.
and
We'll try this again.
We're going to try it again. This has been rehearsed many times.
Oh, yeah, really.
I love the mountains. I love the rolling hills. I love the flowers. I love the daffodils. I love the campfires when all the lights are low. Boom-de-yada, 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 boom, 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 boom. No. We were only supposed to do it once. See how much fun it can be? It can be a lot of fun. All right, now the second song I'm going to sing is a song about creation. And this song can be sung out in the campfire, but you can sing it at home. You can sing, and there's motions to it, okay? We'll sing it through first, and then I'll show you the motion. Some of you may remember it. It was a song Mary Rice Hopkins wrote, and I really enjoy it. It's about a hippopotamus. In the beginning, God made the sea and the forest filled with trees. He made the mountains up so high, and on the top He placed the sky. God's fingerprints are everywhere. just to show how much he cares. And in between he had loads of fun. He made the hippo who weighs a ton. Hip, 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 hippopotamus. Hip, hip, hooray, God made all of us. Hip, 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 hippopotamus. Hip, hip, hooray, God made us. Now, I'm going to show you some motions, and you can do it with me, okay? In the beginning, God made the sea and the forest filled with trees. He made the mountains up so high, and on the top he placed the sky. God's fingerprints are everywhere just to show how much he cares. And in between, he had loads of fun. He made the hippo who weighs a ton. And then you go, hip, 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 hippopotamus. And when you sing the hippopotamus, you're going like a hippopotamus. And then hip, hip, hooray, God made all of us, and you turn around in a circle and come back. And then hip, 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 hippopotamus. Hip, hip, hooray, God made us. Okay, can we do that? In the beginning, God made the sea and the forest filled with trees. He made the mountains up so high, and on the top he placed the sky. God's fingerprints are everywhere just to show how much he cares. And in between he had loads of fun. He made the hippo who weighs a ton. Hip, 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 hippopotamus. Hip, hip, hooray, God made all of us. Hip, 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 hippopotamus. Hip, hip, hooray, God made us. Isn't that a good song? That is a good song. And I hope you can sing it and enjoy it too. And you can be like that hippopotamus walking around. A happy hippo is a good thing. All right, well, our time is up. Next week we're going to find out what happens to Elaine. And, I don't know. I'm kind of nervous about thinking about it. But we're going to go to the middle of the alphabet, and we might think of your name. Maybe somebody's name begins with a P, or an L, or maybe an R, and we'll be in the middle of the alphabet. So it might be you that I'm picturing in my imagination next week. All right, let's have our prayer, and then we'll be done for today. Father, thank you again for this day that you've given to us, and for our time to be together, for hearing our story. And we're looking forward to the day that we'll be back here in the building, and we'll be able to hear our story, sing our songs, and share together in a big celebration of your goodness. So, in the meantime, be with the boys and girls and help them through this time, and their families as well. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I'll see you, boys and girls. Bye-bye.